Last night's Board of Trustees went over 3.5 hours.
I don't think we're gonna do that.
I'm happy.
Planning was 3 hours also.
Wow.
That's what happens when they only have one meeting a month in the summer.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So Jennifer, we're ready to go?
Yes, Chairman, you can begin.
Okay, welcome everyone. This is the Zoning Board of Appeals for August 12th, 2020. And we've got 2 items on our agenda, 41 Blanchard and 26 Magnolia Drive. And this evening we have a contingent of board members. Mr. Capasso, who's our alternate, will be attending as a voting member tonight, Mr. Gutman, Mr. Gombos, and I. So the first order is 41 Blanchard, and this is a public hearing for plans to construct a larger rear yard deck on the property. Who will be heard on this application?
I see 2 people. Hold on one second.
That'll be Max and Ricky.
Max and Ricky, yep.
Yeah.
Thanks, Dan. Max and Ricky, can you hear us? Ricky, can you hear us? I see that you unmuted yourself. Max, can you hear us?
I can, let me see. Okay, all right, sorry about that. I was some technical difficulties. Good afternoon, everybody. Good evening, actually. It's Max Farang, I'm the architect of record for Mr. and Mrs. Julka for their deck addition at the rear of their properties. We are, I don't know if Mr. Julka is with us, but we are seeking respectfully variance for a rear setback. Our deck, our rear, you all have the address, right?
Yes.
Okay. So the rear setback is supposed to be 25 feet. And we are protruding into it. We're seeking a variance at the line of 13.5 feet. There is an existing 3.5 feet deck on the property already, and we are basically seeking to expand that by I believe it's 9 feet into the property line.
11.5.
I hope everybody can hear me. So my computer, the voice is acting up a little bit. Sometimes it sounds like I'm underwater. I'm not sure if you can clearly hear me clearly.
That's a little static.
Okay. Oops. I'm back. Sorry about that. Any questions or I did send, I don't know if Jennifer, did you see that little PDF that my office sent with some pictures? I'm not sure if they sent it to you or, but we sent a little PDF with the photographs of the properties adjacent to us in the back.
When did you send it?
Jose, I didn't get anything.
No, this was sent this afternoon. I
Okay,
think.
it's too late. So you can share your screen if you like. Could you give him the ability to share his screen?
I can, I'm not exactly sure. Can you guys see my screen? If I'm not like.
Well, down at the bottom, there's a little green button.
Share screen.
Share
All
screen.
right, got it. So let me, can everybody see this or?
You see your,
We say your email.
there you
Okay.
go.
Yeah, there we go.
That's
So this is basically the actual zoning, and you can see here the proposed, it's a track stack. Can everybody see this?
Yes.
Okay, so the rear setback is 13.5. And you can see the line of the existing deck to which is to remain, by the way. So we protruded into the setback to the line of 13.5. The right-hand setback to the house, the required is 10 feet, and we are not changing any of that. The setback to the new deck is 19.83 feet. And I shall have some pictures to show you. Okay. Let me see if I can, maybe, okay. So the properties that we are showing, basically the photo number 1 is the property at the southerly side, is the rear of the house. As you can see, there is quite a bit of distance between the actual properties line and the house in the back. This is a photograph of the existing 3.5 feet deck, the way it is now prior to the addition. This photo number 4 is the neighbor basically this is Blanchard is to the right of Blanchard, and which would be our westerly side. You have a north sign, you can see the north sign. And then the photo number 3 is the neighbor on the easterly side of Blanchard and the house in question. Is it clearly visible to everybody?
Yes.
You want us to go back, and you have the survey here, I'm not sure.
So, was there any conversations between you or the homeowner and the neighbors whose houses you showed us?
I have not personally had any conversations, but I am privy to the fact that the homeowner was telling us that basically they have all been notified and there hasn't been any objections to. Also, because we're not right up against the property line, we tried to do this with some kind of with some level of discretion. We left several feet to the property line. And, also I was advising the homeowner that it's a good idea to have a little level of green in the back for they have kids, young kids. So, it's not a bad idea to leave a little bit of grass in the backyard, which is what we're trying to do.
The homeowner, John, I believe he could speak to the fact that whether he had personal, verbal conversation with the neighbors. Ricky, are you there?
You are on mute, Ricky. I think he's muted.
He's unmuted now, but we still can't hear him.
Ricky, could you turn up your speakers? We can't hear you.
Ricky? Ricky?
Well, the neighbor to his rear is my brother-in-law, and he told me that he spoke to him, if that's of any help to you, and he has no objection.
I don't think there has been any comments as far as I know.
Do we have any neighbors that are in line to speak at tonight's meeting? Jennifer?
I don't see anyone with their hand raised, Chairman.
Okay. Max, I'm a little bit concerned
Yes.
about the size of the deck, given how close you're going to the rear property line.
Mhm, mhm.
Ed mentioned to me that you have an application in for a fence. Can you tell me a little bit about how high the fence is that you're trying to get approved, and where the fence is going to be? Is it just going to be on the back line, or is it on all three sides of the back?
Mr. Chairman, honestly, I know about the fence, but I do not know the technicalities. Let me see if we can. Let me see if I can actually text Mr. Julka to see if he can unmute himself. I'm not exactly sure, but he can talk to. He can maybe speak to that effect. I do not know of any comments or negative comments from, as far as I know, from the neighbors. But it would be great if we could hear directly from Mr. Julka about the neighbors.
Dan Romer, could you look up the fence permit on your laptop?
Yes, I'm on it now. It says Oklahoma style lattice top 5x5 posts. It doesn't say the height. Let me see
Lattice
if I-
top, it's probably 6 foot.
Yeah, that's what I'm guessing. It's a
Yeah,
6
'cause
foot
if it were
privacy
4,
with
you
a
would need a
lattice
permit,
top.
right?
You still need a permit for any fence. The
Oh, okay.
maximum height in the front yard is 4 foot and 60% open. On the side and rear's maximum height without a variance is 6 foot.
Yeah,
And Dan,
I don't-
can you tell where that fence is? Is it just along the back, or is it the sides as well?
no, I don't have it on a survey. I just have the application online. So I couldn't tell you where exactly it is.
I just reached out to Mr. Julka and asking him if he knows the height. I'm not exactly sure why we are not hearing him. I thought he had
Can you call him and put him on speaker?
just 1 second. I can do that, sure. Hi, Ricky, it's Max. Yeah, we are trying to hear, the board members are trying to hear from you. One of the questions, you are on mute. I don't know how come nobody can hear you. You need to unmute yourself. Or anyways, I have you on, what is it?
I did. I muted. Somehow I'm not sure why you guys can't hear me.
We can see you. Everybody can see you. Anyways, the major question that the chairperson has for you is what kind of a fence are you proposing to put at the rear? And also, what is the height of the fence?
And will it go along the sides?
And on the sides, are you also having the same fence on the sides too, or is just in the
That is
back?
correct. No, that is correct. On the side also.
And what is the height of your fence?
Same as 6 foot.
Okay. And the next question I think that came up is that if anybody and any of your neighbors has expressed any comments, or have they had any comments about this application and the fact that you're putting a deck in the back?
I spoke to all three right in the back. I spoke to him. He had no problem. He actually liked it. Right to my right is Maureen. She has no problem. Also on the left, the neighbor couple, a very nice couple with little kid. They actually love it because it gives them this privacy. So I have spoken to all three of them. They had no problem.
Okay.
And if I may add, I think just from being there and when I was there to measure, I did talk to to Mr. Julka's neighbors, and they were actually on the deck. I was there to measure, and we mentioned to them that we were applying for a new deck, and there has been no negative feedback that I could tell. Also, the distance is quite, I would say, to their deck from the property line, it's going to be approximately 40 feet, 35 to 40 feet to their deck. And if you add to that the 13 and a half feet that we have, so I would say we should be minimum 50 feet away. The two decks are at least 50 feet away from each other once everything is said and done, post addition.
I think I do have a question about why the deck needs to be quite as large as it is, because I appreciate that that the neighbor's deck is a good distance, and that mollifies the issue a little bit, but this is still a very intrusive, getting very intrusively close to that yard. And I mean, I guess my concern is the current resident doesn't have a problem with it, but he may not be there forever, and someone else may really feel, I mean, there is a reason why we have the setback rules, and this really seems to be such an extreme intrusion that I'm not sure that this much of a variance is warranted.
I'm not exactly sure about. I understand your concerns, and of course they're valid. But the deck is not like a mega deck, honestly. If it protrudes past the line of the house by 14 feet 4 inches. So if you include the existing deck, you're talking about 16 by 17. That is 16 feet deep by 17 feet wide. We just were trying to consider in this COVID-19 situation, and we're just trying to give this, because the current deck, they're only allowed 3.5 feet. So we're just trying to give them a little bit of a livable space for their family, so that they can. And honestly, one of the items that I need to point out, which is might come in strange, but with this whole COVID situation, one of the items that we find ourselves working on for our clients is actually deck additions. A lot of people are doing that lately. It seems to be a common pattern. Deck additions, people are spending a lot more time in their homes. So,
I mean, have you studied how much, what size is necessary to accommodate a table and chairs and the type of things you would hope to put there? And it just seems to me that I'd want to hear your thoughts about that.
Mr. Gottman, I would say, at the very least, 14 feet is sort of, I would, if it were my home, and if I were to put an addition on it, to have a semi-decent deck for my family, the minimum, in my view, would be 14 feet. I don't know if that answers your question. It's sort of like a little bit of a personal thing. But in order to be able to fit like a sitting area with an umbrella and a barbecue, I would say at least a depth of 14 feet seems to be the minimum I would go with if this were my home.
Yeah, I guess I'm still, I mean, the current deck is much smaller and
It's 3 feet, Mr. Gutman.
yes, I mean, and I could understand wanting it to be larger than that, but I guess it just, given that it's so close to the property line, I'm just wondering if a smaller deck would still work.
As opposed to the 16 feet. I mean, the 16 feet is the total. We are adding basically 13 feet to the, I'm sorry, 12 and a half feet. This existing deck is 3.5 feet. And we are adding basically 12 and a half feet to it. I mean, considering, you know, they have a fairly decent sized backyard. I think Mr. Julka is open to discuss this. You know, it's not. Do you, Ricky? Is there anything you want to add in terms of the size of the deck, or?
I think just concern, like you said, in this COVID situation, sitting outside, you know, just having a little outside, have a guest over, family over, it's just a little more ease, you know, putting a chair and table and an umbrella, a little more compact. I mean, you know, it's a decent sized backyard, and the neighbors don't have an issue. I'm not covering the full backyard, just going, like you said, at 12 and a half feet.
Well, instead of making it square, why couldn't you have it more of a rectangle so that it went more along the side of the back the back of the house and less into the backyard?
I mean, that could be a possibility. We were trying to preserve the existing steps. These stairs, everybody can see our screen. The stairs on the left side, these are existing stairs. So we were trying to keep them. The one on the right side are new. And so my apologies. The existing deck is 4 feet 4. And we are adding 11 feet 8 to it. Just, I don't know if everybody can see the
So it's only like 40 inches high. One of the oddities of our code is if he were to take this deck and disconnect it from the house, he could go within 5 feet of the rear and side property line. And if he were to build it right where it is and put a roof over it, he wouldn't need a variance either, because then it would be considered a rear porch and could protrude into the setback.
And it could protrude into the setback, yes.
With a roof, and it would be more obtrusive to the neighbors, but yet the code would allow it.
Well, Ed,
You'd be very unpopular with this neighbor.
Yeah, and it has to be reiterated that the neighbors have absolutely no issues with this.
Right.
And, you know, at least in my, Mr. Gutman, in my view, we were actually trying to do this with some discretion, because originally Mr. Juka wanted to go up to within like 8 or 9 feet of the property, and I convinced him not to. For 2 reasons, you know. First of all, because I mentioned to him that, you know, we would try to do this with some kind of at a compromising level. And second, that, and I truly believe in this, is that he should leave a certain degree of green space in the back, which he does have, you know. In my view, at least, honestly, we were not asking for the moon, to be quite honest. I thought we already were doing this with a certain level of discretion by adding this 11 feet, only 11 feet. You know, it's not, and it's not a high deck. So keep in mind that there may be like 3 feet above ground when everything is said and done. So it's not an imposing structure. That I would like to point that out, you know, as you can see from.
In particular, the second section,
You have 5 steps above 40 inches.
it looks like from your drawing that you had an existing stair and you're adding a second stair. And just
We are, yes, we are on the right-hand side, yes.
why?
There is a little pathway over there with a walkway, and I think at least originally the homeowner were thinking of having the barbecue down at the grade level, and then just have seating space on top.
Actually, like really, and if you made the deck addition, if you wanted to keep the area the same, and you changed the shape so that you made it more rectangular, and you kept the you kept the new stair, and you built the deck where the old stair was and out, you could probably get the same footprint, the same number of square feet.
Right.
You wouldn't go as far towards your neighbor's property. Have you looked at that as an option? I mean, the space. I think we could do it and give you the same amount of square footage, but just not go as close to the next neighbor's yard.
Yeah, it looks like it could mirror the same line of the house out to where it cuts in.
Yep.
And if you'd get half of the expansion out and just make it wider, and you'd get the same square footage.
And your deck would be on the right, and your stairs would be on the right-hand side near the pathway. So if you wanted to put the grill on the ground, it still would be in the right location for you.
So if I understand you correctly, the idea would be to keep the stairs on the left as is and then expand more to the right side.
No.
You would keep the stair on the right side that you're adding, and you build out the deck from where that left side stair is.
I hear you.
Out to the left-hand side of the house.
I hear you. So yeah, that would be a possibility, certainly. But still, I would like to, if possible, not go under a total of 14 feet, guys. I mean, I don't think that's going to make it at least viable.
So right now, he's asking for a variance of 11.5 feet. What
Correct.
would the board be willing to consider?
I think if you take half that out, it would still enable him to build the same size deck, same square footage.
And it seems like if you only had one stairway, one set of stairs, there'd be more usable. You wouldn't have to keep an area free for traffic, so you'd have more usable space in the same square footage.
Ricky, are you online? Are you listening to what all these comments from the board? Okay.
But only thing I have is, if you look at the right side where he's trying to make a step, if you look at it, it's actually, we have a, I think it's like a court where we come out of the door and then go into the step, and then we have a room to go. What we were deciding to make another step on the right. So that room is going to be, if you look at it, that pathway, that's going to be waste, because if the current deck is, you walk in and it's 3.5 foot, but there's another wall. That's where the kitchen is, and then we're trying to make another step that's going down.
No, Ricky. I mean, I think the idea was to expand it in the opposite direction.
Yeah.
Make it more rectangular towards the way where the existing steps are.
Towards the east.
Yes.
Max, may I just interject 1 second? This is Ricky's brother. How are you?
Hi, how are you?
Good. So hello to the board. Just one quick piece of information. There's a bump out on the right side where the stairwell, the new stairwell that we're proposing is. There's a bump out, and that's why we can't have a rectangular deck in the rear. It will not meet the.
They're talking
We're talking about the opposite side, guys.
Okay, so the issue with reducing so again, it's under the current conditions, obviously, we're trying to maintain some sort of distance, and that's why when we invite people to the house, we're actually having them in the rear yard. To try to maintain 6 feet of distance in let's say in a 8-foot or a 10-foot deck with a chair and a full table set is pretty much impossible to do.
I hear you, and that is
Not
a
asking you to do that.
what is it, Ed?
I just said we're not asking you to do that.
No, I believe he was referring to the social distancing issue. Would you repeat, please, what you just said? I mean, I understood what you were saying, but maybe it's not clear to the board.
So if I repeat myself, sure, I apologize for expressing myself properly. But what I'm trying to say is the main intent is to try to maintain. The reason we're having people in the backyard, the reason Max was saying that there's more of a demand to put in decks now is obviously people are entertaining in their backyard a lot more than ever before. So to try to maintain social distancing, which, the etiquette is 6 feet, at the very minimum, we'd like to have 4 feet on the other side, which would be about 14 feet combined. Just to have, chairs between the decks and so on and so forth. And that was the intent, to have at least 14 feet, I imagine.
Yeah, I think that's a very well put point, in my opinion, at least. But, I mean, we have to see if the board agrees to it. I was not under the impression that really we were asking for anything like, excuse the French, like a crazy thing here in terms of expanding to the rear. But the idea that the board is proposing, Ricky, is to go to the left part of this, towards the existing. But again, I would reiterate that in like a real usable deck, not under these circumstances.
I don't think anybody's proposing to make the deck smaller. We're not saying that the deck should have less square footage. We're just moving some of the square footage from the rear of your deck, going out the full 12.5 new feet or whatever the number exactly is, and taking some of that off of it and putting it on the left side of the house where you've got your old stairs. So you're essentially taking square footage away from the rear and moving it to the side. It'd be the same square footage. It's just arranged differently. So you can still get your 6 feet separation. It's just the shape would be slightly different. Instead of it being a large square, it would be a flatter rectangle.
And the stairs can typically stay the way they are. Imagine the line where your arrow says now new 36-inch high Trex railing. You see this arrow to the left side? Okay. Imagine that this line moves back to the level of your landing, for example. And then I'm just, thinking out loud. And then we will reduce the depth to 14 feet instead of 16. Ricky, is that something you would want to maybe discuss with the board, and then just give us your thoughts about that?
Keeping the way it is.
No, I'm saying more or less in terms of square footage. You know, the first riser that you have and the existing stairs, the first steps, maybe taking the line of the deck and aligning it with that. Without going to the left, basically. You see my screen, right? Moving the line of the deck to the left, align it with your first riser, and you would still be able to keep the steps, by the way, because one of our criteria was to see if you could keep the steps because are existing from a cost point of view, you know, and then maybe reduce the depth by a couple of feet, Ricky. That's basically what I think the gist of what the board is trying to achieve here. Are you following what I'm saying?
No, that's not what we're trying to achieve. We're trying to get it further from the backyard than 2 feet.
Well, that's why I was saying maybe 14 feet, you know, if you start really going under 14 feet, I think is really by today's social distancing standards, I don't think is really a viable depth, less than 14 feet.
This is a subject I don't think that as a board we've confronted before, but the problem with that consideration about social distancing, we hope at some point the coronavirus pandemic is going to go away, but a variance is forever. And so I don't think it, at least from my perspective, I don't know if the other board members have a thought, but I don't think a variance that is a permanent ruling should be made on the basis of what we all hope will be a not short-lived enough, but a situation that we're not going to deal with forever.
And that's obviously a well-taken point too, and you're correct about that, no question about it.
So why don't we carry this application over to next time, and the architect and the owner can put their heads together and come up with, they've heard our feedback. They can come up with another plan or resubmit this plan, and we will vote on it. Make sense?
Is it keeping the way it is? Can we, instead of 14, can we go to 13? Can we go down to 13?
You could. I don't think you wouldn't get my vote at 13, no. But, you know, you can do whatever you want to do.
Well, we would like to have a resolution to this. You know, this is just a simple deck, guys. So if you give us some guidance, more concrete guidance,
well,
we will just...
a great deal of guidance.
Well, I'm not exactly sure I'm hearing this correctly. I mean, I understand you want to go to the left side, but you're proposing to cut the size of our addition by half, basically.
No, we're not. Sir.
So maybe you want to reiterate exactly
what's the square footage of the current deck?
The current deck square footage is 17 and change, including, so I'll tell you in a second. 17.25 times 16, that's including, is 276 square feet. That's including the existing 4'4" deck.
Right. Okay, now if you extended the deck to the left, looking at your plan, to the edge of the house.
To the edge of the house?
To the edge of the house. And you could get a great deal of square footage and not go back nearly as deep. And you'd probably need 5 feet or 6 feet less variance. And you'd still have the same square footage deck.
But then if I go to the edge of the house on the left side, I mean, I'm gonna probably have to move those steps too.
Yes. you must.
because otherwise it doesn't make sense to have the steps recessed into,
Not only that, there's a, Max, there's a window.
there is an air conditioning unit there and there is a window well. And also, I don't think really it's gonna look too good. It's not gonna, I mean, it's not gonna be aesthetically a very viable solution to come all the way to, you're proposing to cut back from this right now. This is a total of 16 feet. So you're proposing to cut back 5 feet to go to an 11-foot deck? 11 total? I mean, I already have 4 feet 4. I'll be adding 5 feet. I mean, is that really a solution? A 10, 12, what is it? You're gonna end up with an 11-foot depth deep deck when nobody is really objecting to it. None of the neighbors are objecting to this.
Are they going to live there for the rest of the time? You know, we have an obligation. We have an obligation to current as well as future neighbors. And, you know, we're not supposed to give out variances willy-nilly, and we're supposed to give out the least variances that work for the applicant. And that's really what we're seeking.
But we're not going right to the deck. I mean, not to the rear of other neighbor in the behind. I mean, they had no problem. They've been living for a long time. They would have with their family. Max, what would be the feet between the proposed deck to the property line?
To the property line is 13.5 feet, plus you have another 35 to 40 feet. So when everything is said and done, you have at least 50 feet between the two decks. In the line of sight, there's 50 feet between the two decks. After this, if we were to build it the way it is, which is, you know, it's not like we are, it's not that we are right up against the fence, guys. There's still almost 14 feet to the fence. And then there's another 35 to 40 feet on the other side of the fence.
I think Pat, our rear neighbor, will stay forever, like permanently forever.
Well, that's something else, but.
How about if you moved to the east, to the end of the steps and came in from the back 2.5? Would the board consider that?
Ed, technically, to go to the edge of the stairs makes a lot of sense, but to go past the edge of this first riser,
I'm not saying,
structurally doesn't make sense either.
I'm not saying go past there. I'm saying
That original.
go to the last riser, like you're saying, to the east,
Yes,
and then bring the back in 2.5. Just suggesting to the ZBA if they would accept the reduction of 2.5.
What is the distance between the proposed deck line on that left side and the end of the stairs? How many feet is that width?
approximately 5 feet. So we would be adding 5 feet to this rectangle, to this hypothetical rectangle. So we would be, if I move the line of the deck to the left by 5 feet, whatever you see on the screen, and then if I come in 2.5 feet, let me just tell you exactly, I will have a deck which is 17.25 plus, let me just give you accurate numbers, 17.25 plus 5 feet, that's 22.5. And if I come in from, if I take out 2.5 feet, as Ed was suggesting, from 16, sorry. So 13.5 times 22.5 is 303 square feet if we follow Ed's suggestion,
Minus the area of the steps.
minus the area of the steps, correct,
You come out to about the same as the other one.
which was 276 square feet. So right now we have 276 square feet. If you have 303 minus the square footage of the steps, we would end up more or less with the same square footage, but cutting back 2.5 feet from the deck.
The-
That be an acceptable solution to the board members?
I think that's acceptable to me. Guys? Any thoughts?
Any thoughts?
I'd be supportive for the compromise.
Me too.
So
I
that would
wouldn't,
then make the request of the variance for 9 feet instead of 11.5.
Okay.
9. If that is agreeable to the board members, I will revise the plans. Shall I read?
You get the variance from this board and you revise the plans for the AHRB.
Yes, sure.
But you should revise them for us, Ed, because we do approve based on plans submitted.
Okay,
So I think these plans, when they're redrawn, should come into you and Dan for you to sign off on them, that it's in accordance with the agreement that we have.
right. We would get them for the AHRB either way. So
Right.
if you want to approve the 9-foot variance to the rear property line tonight, then we could verify that on the new submittal.
Okay.
And at 5-foot addition to the,
Yeah, but you don't need a variance. You don't need a variance for that. That's,
no, you don't. No, I was just reiterating the discussions we had.
Okay, so should I, is there anyone that wants to be heard from the neighbors at this stage?
I don't see anybody with their hand raised.
Then I'll move to close the hearing. All in favor? That's unanimous. And I move to grant the application with the modification that the depth of the deck would be limited to 9.
9-foot variance.
9-foot variance, yes.
Be limited to 9 feet. And plans will be resubmitted to the building department for their okay. And the building department's final approval on this is contingent on approval of the variance. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
I,
Aye.
That's unanimous. Okay, good luck to
So
you.
thank you very much for your consideration. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Thank you, board.
Thank you. Thank you, Ed. Thank you.
Welcome.
And thank you.
Welcome.
And the next item on our agenda is 26 Magnolia Drive. And this is a public hearing for plans to construct a new retaining wall on the property. And who will be heard on this application?
I believe there's 2 people here as well. Brian, can you hear us? Oh, you're muted. Hold on.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, I'm Brian Ferguson, the homeowner. Thank you for your time.
And Jeff is here as well. Jeff, can you hear us? Jeff, can you hear us? Do you know if he's the person calling in too? We have one more person in the attendees.
I don't know if he's calling in. I mean, I see him on there, but on the app, but obviously don't hear him.
Yeah.
I'll send him a text message.
Okay, sorry. Do you know what his cell phone number is?
Yes. Would you like me to? Oh yeah, right. That would help.
I mean, I'm just wondering if this is his number.
Yeah, he's a 914-458-110.
No, it was a different number. I'm sorry.
I'm texting him now, letting him know we can't hear him.
Thank you.
Oh, I think he's calling me right now. Hold on a sec. Hi, yeah, so that is him from the other number. He said he was calling in from a different number. So
Okay.
if you could admit him, please.
I will. Jeff, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Sorry about the confusion.
That's okay.
Okay, guys, do you want to tell us about the application?
Yeah, basically, I don't know if you can, if you guys took a ride by the site or not, or have the drawings in front of you, but basically at the front of Mr. Ferguson's house, there's a deck for a front porch, I should say. It's about 5 or 6 feet above grade. There's about a 10-foot section of land, front to back, that is level, and then it drops off relatively, steeply down towards it's about a 45-degree angle down towards the street. So basically, what Mr. Ferguson would like to do is construct a retaining wall to level off that property. Apologize, to have some room for his kids to play in the front yard.
So,
Can you guys still hear me okay?
anything else you guys want to add about this application before we ask you questions?
I'm sorry, I missed that last bit.
Is there anything else you want to say about this application before we ask you some questions?
Oh, Brian, is there anything you want to add?
No, I mean, I guess I can answer your questions as they come. So,
Mr. Manley, could you just state what the exact variance is that's required?
Oh, the variant. I apologize. The variance. So the variance is for.
That is a proposed wall of 10 foot 2 inches, where maximum is allowed is 4 foot, requiring a variance of 6 foot 2 inches.
Oh, thank you.
So, to some extent, if when you drive down Magnolia, the property on one side of you has a very high wall.
correct.
Property on the other side of you has no wall.
Correct.
From a neighborhood aspect, from a person walking through your neighborhood, driving through your neighborhood, my experience was that the very high wall was very off-putting because it made what's a claustrophobic arrangement of houses and streets more claustrophobic. So if I understand your application correctly, it's an interesting problem because there's a benefit to you by flattening the land, creating more usable space, and building the retaining wall. You get more usable property, and you don't really lose very much. But if I was a person on your street, walking down your street or driving down your street, it creates an even more massive wall, which is not terribly friendly. And I think unless I'm missing something, it's that essentially the dilemma or the conundrum. On the one hand, you can get better property. On the other hand, the neighborhoods gets a more massive wall, which creates more of a claustrophobic, unfriendly street line. Is there anything else I should be thinking about other than those two pictures?
I guess I would. So the benefit for us, you've got pretty. That's accurate, and that's kind of how we're thinking of it. In terms of the sort of the visual trade-off, it would be, to be clear, it would be different than the wall at, I think they're 32 Magnolia, which is the house just north of us. That's a wall that is, I don't know the exact height, but I'm pretty sure it's over 10 feet. And that goes directly, it's just one continuous wall from the street up, and that kind of creates their backyard. This, in what we're hoping to do here, currently there is a retaining wall that separates our home from the street, and that's about, I don't know, 3 or 4 feet tall, or something, maybe 4 feet tall, something like that. This proposed wall would not be directly on top of it, so it wouldn't be a sheer face. It's set back by, I don't know the exact distance, and Jeff,
it's about 7.5 feet. It's about 7 feet.
So again, a small oddity of the code is that if he had at the property line a 4-foot wall and then set back more than 7 feet, the 7.5 he set back, another 4-foot wall, he'd be in compliance.
Yes, and also it would read very differently from street. I mean,
Right. Well, yes.
a skyscraper, you're stepping back.
Tiered wall would look better. He'd get 8 foot high and still get the exact same yard as he's looking for.
Well, but
that 4-foot wall is going to stay. And sorry, go ahead.
Oh,
no,
so
isn't the application for the existing wall, which is about 4 feet, is going to stay?
I don't see that.
The wall is an additional 8 feet or 10 feet.
It's an additional 10 feet, yeah. So there'd be the 4-foot wall, which is it abuts the sidewalk, and then about 7.5 feet back behind it, there would be a second tier. That second tier would be 10 foot 2 or so.
Your existing stone wall is on the village right of way.
Yes.
That's correct, yes.
Oh, so you want to leave an intrusion on the right of way and then put another.
Well, actually, yeah, I should probably amend what I said. So the setback between the existing retaining wall and the new retaining wall is actually going to be closer to 12 to 15 feet. If you want, I can give you an exact measurement. So the retaining wall that's existing, I mean, that's been there probably since the street was built. That's there, and then there's a 7.5 foot gap, which is village property before Mr. Ferguson's property line, and then 7.5 feet inside that property line is where we're putting the new retaining wall. It's 10 feet high.
So still, if you were to tier the wall and go up 3.5 or whatever at the property line, and then another 3 at the proposed location, you'd have a 3-tiered wall that wouldn't present as that high and be compliant, except for, your existing nonconformity on the village right of way, but you're not touching that.
Correct.
And still give you that level grade.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, obviously, Brian, that's probably a better answer for Brian, or a question for Brian to answer.
So, to make sure I'm hearing you correctly, it's building 2 retaining walls to basically tier it so that it visually is broken up instead of being 1, it's 2.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, on its face, just kind of just shooting from the hip. That's something that I don't take particular issue with.
There is
Yeah,
a probably significant cost component to that. Obviously, you know, to keep in line with the rest of the neighborhood, you know, we're going to have a mortar stone wall. A mortar stone wall requires a footing below frost depth. So we have to go a minimum of 3.5 feet below the ground surface. So what we're going to end up doing is putting in a 3.5 foot footing. Anywhere where there's a wall has to have a 3.5 foot deep footing, and, you know, generally probably has to be, you know, 3 feet back. So it would significantly increase the cost if we had to actually construct 2 walls, just because we have to. It's a lot of extra concrete. It's a lot of extra reinforcing. You know, where we could accomplish that with 1 wall. Obviously, it's taller. You know, it's still set back the same distance ultimately. But I just want to, you know, there's a significant cost consideration there as well.
But you do get a sky plane benefit, though. I mean, from the street level, by doing it that way, you're going to get more light into the street, which is a benefit to the neighborhood.
Well, there's the whole front of that, behind that retaining wall in the village right away, but, you know, that's all tree lined anyway. There's trees back there. As far as what you would see of the retaining wall, it's probably minimal anyway.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Mr. Ferguson?
I'm having trouble reading the plans. Are those, you know, triangles and circles all along the edge? Are those plantings?
No, those point towards the sections of the retaining wall themselves. So if you go to the second sheet, it corresponds to the 1, 2, 3, 4. You know, the 1 through 9. It just basically shows what the front of the retaining wall is going to look like from that direction.
Okay.
I don't know if there's any plantings. There's no plantings that, you know, we sort of left that out just for clarity purposes. But we could probably submit some photos or even revise the drawings to put on. A lot of it is shrubbery, but it's, you know, it's 4 or 6 foot tall shrubbery that's sitting on top of a 4 foot wall. So again, there's not really much you can see even towards the house from the street. You know, I think the wall is going to be mostly occluded anyway, just based on the existing shrubbery that's there.
And if Mr. Ferguson and his engineering architectural team did what you said, would the application then be as of right?
Yes.
That's another thing to think about. If you do that, there might be some additional hard costs in construction, but if you could do it as right, you avoid a lot of these.
Absolutely, yeah. So the simple fact. I'm sorry, I missed that, Mr. Hoffman.
I say you would be losing square footage up top.
No.
Yeah.
No, we wouldn't lose any square footage. Ultimately,
well, because
you know,
inside
he puts his first wall at the property line. He has the existing wall at the curb, then he puts another wall at the property line, and his proposed wall is 7'5" back from the property line. So once you're more than 7 foot from the first wall, they don't count, they don't add up in height. If it's closer than 7 foot, you combine them in height for zoning. So we cost them more for the 2 footings, but you know, that would make it zoning compliant. I didn't go look at it, so I don't know what the view of it is. So that'd be up to you guys. I mean, if you had showed some photos or some planting screening on the plan, that might.
I could. I mean, I have the Google Street View pulled up. If you like, I can share my screen and you guys can see what it looks like.
Yes, he has access.
Okay.
Oh wait. You can't do it from your phone because you're calling in.
Yeah, do it from the Jeff Veritas one, not the one I'm speaking from.
Okay, you have access with that one too.
Okay. Okay, so this is what the street view looks like. This is the neighbor's. I don't know if you can see where my mouse is. The neighbor's property and the neighbor's stairway is on the left, and then this right here is the shrubbery. You can see the 4-foot wall up against the road here, and then this is the shrubbery, and deep in the back you can see Mr. Ferguson's house. There's a staircase over here that, you know, obviously it shows on the drawings, but this is what it currently looks like. You know, basically.
That shrubbery is how high?
It's well, the wall, just judging from the wall height. The wall height's 4 feet. It's between 4 and 6 feet. That shrubbery. So total from the street, it's anywhere between 8 and 10 feet high.
Have you done any drawings that would show what this view would look like with the proposed wall?
I did not do an elevation view showing this wall and the new wall in the back.
What?
I think that would be very helpful.
Understood.
So, Peter, if I might,
Yeah, go ahead, Bruce.
Mr. Ferguson and Jeff, maybe we should carry this over. The two of you could discuss and consider two options. One would be, as Mr. Manley outlined, which would be an option which you did it as of right, in which case you would not have to come back to us. And the other would be one in which you did what you currently are discussing, but provide us with additional information such as an elevation.
Okay.
To see what the
One
on the street.
Understood. So one point I would like to make is if we were to go with, you know, our as of right build, right, we would build 2 4-foot retaining walls. Ultimately, the second retaining wall is still in the same location. The only difference is we've added one extra wall in between.
Right. You know, the difference would be that even if we didn't like it, we couldn't do anything about it. And in the other option, if we don't like it, we could maybe not vote in favor of it.
Correct. No, you're absolutely right. I guess the point I'm trying to make is we could put this wall, as of right, we could put this wall in exactly the same location as of right. The only difference what you're asking for is, hey, because if you want to fit the code, then you have to build a second wall in front of it. So to seemingly cut the height, the single height wall, we would basically bring it up.
The wall is over 4 feet and they are separated by more than 7 feet.
Yes.
That would be code compliant.
Yes. So I guess that's, my point is ultimately, if you were to run a section through this, the difference is, instead of having one 8-foot wall, you're going to have 2 4-foot walls that are spaced 7 feet apart. The wall isn't changing. What's, changing is you're going to have basically 3 steps and, one small step and one big step versus 3 smaller steps.
Yeah, we understand that completely, but it does change the appearance of a wall. But if you want to make the argument that this is board, that it's not going to be seen and not going to make any difference, you can do that.
Yeah, and it's entirely possible that the plans you've submitted or something close to it, you could show us that with the existing vegetation, if it could be retained and put in the wall, would properly screen it. So that, but we'd be guessing at that.
Understood.
If we tried to vote on that tonight.
Yes. Okay. All right. Well, obviously we understand where you're coming from. I'll, Brian and I can talk about this offline, and, hoping that if, the shrubbery does work as screening well enough, we'd be able to save the additional cost in footing. But like I said, Brian and I'll talk about that.
Fair enough.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. We appreciate it.
We'll adjourn and
adjourn to September.
Ready.
Oh, Brian, did you want to say something?
Yeah, just wanted to add in a comment. Firstly, thanks for the consideration and everything. And I'm fine with this as a conclusion, but I just wanted to, I guess, just give a personal opinion. Obviously, I live here and just going by it. I guess I don't, I understand the wall of our next door neighbor. I just want to make clear that what I think this will look like would be considerably different. The big difference being that is, whatever height it is, 10, 12 feet, and it's right on the street.
Right
This
up.
would be, I guess you know this, but I'm just to kind of reiterate the visual that I like, because I walk by it all the time and like what I think it looks like. Basically, there's going to be 15 feet in difference from where the street starts to where this new retaining wall would be. And it would be blocked out by, we have existing shrubbery, but we'd also like, we're thinking about adding some other stuff too. So, I definitely, sorry.
Point taken, it's much better than your neighbor, but we can't stop what happened before. We can't make.
Of course.
If you were touching the wall on the right of way, we wouldn't let you put it back, most likely. So,
of course, and I'm not saying it to say they're allowed to have it. I should have it too. I'm just to give color on. Yeah. I know you kind of give a description of it, and it resonates in some ways, but in other ways, I think it would look different. And we live on the street. Like I don't want it to feel claustrophobic, and I don't think it would. I mean, it's a fairly wide part of the street. So all helpful feedback and pushback, but those are kind of just my thoughts.
Okay, great.
That's great.
We'll see you sometime soon then.
All right. Thank you very much.
Great.
Thanks for your time.
Okay. Move to close.
Second.
All in favor? That's unanimous. Thanks an awful lot, everyone.
good night,
Especially you,
guys.
Jennifer.
Good night, all.
Thanks for not going 3 hours.
Yes, thank you.
Good night.
The first time.
Have a good night.
So much for an easy agenda.
Yeah.